Robert Salvador, and he's the CEO of Digibuild. You can find him at Robert J. Salvador on X. He joins us now via Skype. So I'm with Kane, way out in conspiracy theorist land right now. They're coming to get us. But no, I just want to talk about this, whatever this is with the cell phone coverage. It just is the solar flare thing just seems to be too convenient. It seems like it is a cyber attack. And when everything is so centralized, look how easy it is to knock out communications.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that word right there, centralization. Having a single point of failure for anything that's really important in society is dangerous. Now, if you want to go down the conspiratorial route, it's weird because the same thing that happened during COVID, we found out all these random little breadcrumbs of people who called that things would happen before COVID. We saw the same people over the last year saying there might be some big cyber attack and the world should prepare for a global cyber attack. And then to your point, it happens today. I saw some tweets from people who couldn't access their bank accounts because they had two-factor authentication on their phones. And when AT&T went down, they could no longer access that extra layer of security they needed to get in. So it all kind of ties really neatly, but in a scary way, into the risks of central bank digital currencies. And what happened today, was a perfect example.
I'm about a second away from pulling most of my money out of all my bank accounts and shoving it in my mattress at this point, because it's true. I mean, everything is with everything being so centralized, it just takes one attack, one push of the button, one discriminatory practice against whatever you're buying, against you because of what your ideology is or your consumer habits are. And that's all it takes, which gets me into this Capital One and this Discover merger today. You had noted, these consolidations into these mega companies. You tweeted this. Every step away from smaller markets and businesses moves us closer to a CBDC. That's a central bank digital currency. And, we've already seen this with purchasing firearms and FFL's Operation Choke Point. If you buy too much gas, though, they could deactivate that. I mean, that's something, again, one press of a button with everything being so centralized. It maybe 10 years ago, Robert, it seemed, or 15 maybe, it seemed kind of far-fetched for some. 20 to 30 years ago, entirely far-fetched. But seems like we're a heartbeat away from this now.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Consolidation in the economy, it happens, but there's supposed to be, mechanisms, antitrust and things like that to keep it from getting too dangerous or risky for the consumer, for the citizens. But, in down economies and with the way the U.S. economy has kind of been built on debt and spending the last 20 years, you're seeing these consolidations where there are becoming fewer and fewer options in the banking and financial system. Even right now, it's not a perfect system, but the way it works is the Federal Reserve is the central bank of the United States and really of the world. But then they lend credit and opportunities down the chain to medium and large banks who then extend credit to the consumer. So you end up with a bunch of credit facilities, credit cards, regional banks, things like that. And so it's still kind of hard to fully censor someone or lock them out of the system. But as you're seeing more and more consolidation, it makes it easier to bring in one single database, one single place that rules them all. And that's what you would have with a central bank digital currency. Essentially, every person would have their own retail account with the Federal Reserve, and they could turn that off at any moment if you tried to purchase a firearm, or the next time they want to lock you down during COVID, they don't ask you or suggest that you do it. They just turn off your purchasing power. And so that is the risk of losing any form of decentralization and having one single point of failure, to your point.
You also made the point of, which I think is it's kind of reminded me of a syntax, programmable spending. Tell me about that.
Sure. So, one of the issues in the economy that people are worried about right now, or economists are worried about, is if people save and don't spend during a period of very high inflation, you don't have growth, then you have deflation, where you're essentially having inflation while the economy shrinks, or stagflation. And that's a big deal. So what you could do with programmable money, and what some of the big powers would want to do, is make it so that it punishes savings. So they could say, if you have some minimum threshold of money in your bank account, if you don't spend it or get below that threshold by a certain date, they could tax you on it. Or even more sinister, like we saw a little bit during COVID, they could get the public addicted to spending by offering essentially free money, helicopter money, but you have to spend it within a certain time. And it's easy to think, oh, that's great. They just gave me $1,600. But then they add thousands and thousands of worth of inflation. So you saw that during COVID. They printed almost $8 trillion. They sent you $1,600 and they gave the rest to rich people and everyone else dealt with the inflation. So programmable money can make it where they can penalize you for saving or addict everyone to inflation and say, hey, we'll give you this money, but you have to spend it by this date. And again, you just end up with a bigger and bigger, more centralized, more powerful government. And that leads to communism, socialism,
Yeah.
all the bad things we talk about.
We're talking with Robert Salvador. You can find him at Robert J. Salvador on X. He's the CEO of Digibuild. It's a top AI company. Speaking of AI, and I want to get in, actually, before I jump into that, there is a way to deal with this federally. And I know Florida has taken some steps to outright ban or to mitigate the problems that this stuff causes at the state level. I mean, it's a lot easier to do at the state level, I think. I don't know if you would ever be able to get everybody on the same page federally to get some kind of defense like this passed.
Yeah, it would be very difficult, especially with, kind of how misincentivized DC is. There's a lot of big banks.
It's a good
and
way to
big
put
money
it.
that
Very
might-
generous, misincentivized.
Yes, exactly. But I do think you are seeing some movement from leaders like Warren Davidson, Thomas Massey, who have made motions to get rid of this. I believe there's a bill in committee right now to ban CBDCs. To your point, though, it's great to see, and I hope to see more at the state level, like you saw Governor DeSantis do in Florida, banning CBDCs. What you can also do, not just banning the CBDCs, you can make it easier for smaller community banks, state banks, to get the charters they need to essentially drink from the faucet of the Federal Reserve. And actually, again, Florida is in the process of exploring a bill making it easier for those central banks to get their charters. So at the end of the day, it comes down to decentralization. We want to decentralize power away from the government in most cases, or at least make it semi-decentralized. And that will be best for the American citizen, best for the consumer. And then the free market will push forward solutions. You never want the solution coming from the top down of government.
Never.
As you alluded to, our government doesn't have a collecting problem. We have a spending problem. So they don't need to see everyone spending to collect more taxes and do more. They need to check their spending.
Exactly.
And so that's why we should be against CBDCs.
Robert, your company it's an AI company, and there's definitely a lot of value in AI. There's also a lot of, I think, potential misuse in AI, especially when you consider what's baked into it, which we've been seeing the past few days as everybody's been testing out Google's AI and Grok on X and these others. I mean, just asking them, basic things like show me a portrait of George Washington or show me this or that, or can you even asking anything that looks like it's politically themed. Someone asking about Tiananmen Square and Google's AI couldn't even explain that because it was too politically sensitive, or I think the phrase used was there are many interpretations, which I thought was wild. I feel like we are past the point of caution, and now we have to really we have to take some serious action because I think the damage has already been done. All of the people that have been developing this, like I said, have been baking this in. They've had a lot of time to do this. We're still going to find out the extent to which how far the bias goes in AI, but I don't know. I don't even have the slightest idea how to even counter what's already there, what's already established, and what's already taken hold, not just in culture, but now probably also in government policy. I mean, AI is used in so many things, and that's the big fear. How far are we down this path, and how much damage has already been done? So it's like a three-part question. And then what's the remedy?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I'm glad you call it out because we have to tackle this head on. We can't ignore it. We can't be afraid of it. As you mentioned, Elon Musk tweeted last night about how woke Google Gemini is. To your point, they prompted it to show American leaders or early founding fathers, and they showed them as all, either Indian or African American, or basically just wouldn't show a white person.
It'd be like asking, Gemini, can you show me, like a typical Japanese samurai warrior? And it shows you like a 5'4" blue-eyed, blonde-haired woman. I mean, it's just
right,
it's
exactly.
so
Show
weird.
me Michael Jordan,
Yeah.
and they show you a picture of Rob Salvador. Come on, that's just not accurate. And so it's good that this is being called out because it is very dangerous. A lot of these big tech companies that have become woke have a very big head start on the AI, and AI is not going away. It is here. It's going to help cure cancer. It's going to help markets. It's going to help make the U.S. more efficient. And most importantly, probably Democrats are already using it. They're using it in politics to find voters. They're using it in get out and vote situations. There are so many things that can be done. So as conservatives, we have to tackle this problem head on. We have to lean into AI, not fear monger around it, not try and ban it. And to the third part of your question, I think what we can do is invest in these technologies, invest in entrepreneurs that do it, get red states to take the lead, like Florida, Texas, that have these big economies. Stop letting Silicon Valley have the dominant market share of all these new technologies. AI is here. We have to build it. And I am slightly excited because, one of the reasons we released our AI poll was to shine a light on the fact that this can be brought into the conservative circles, into these red states, where AI, kind of like Elon Musk is trying to do with Grok, can be uncensored and actually help with things, can give you information without trying to check your opinions at the door. So I think the biggest thing I would say is just don't fear it, understand it, don't create a committee to fearmonger about it. Put out plans to figure out how do we invest in it in a safe way? How do we get, non-woke entrepreneurs to build their own versions like Elon Musk? So
that's a
I'm glad
great
you
point.
asked that, and we can take steps to do that.
That's a great point. And yeah, I think that's what it'll take. Yeah, the answer to abuse isn't misuse, it's proper use, and making sure that we're funding and putting power behind that proper use. Robert J. Salvador, you can find him at that name on X, digibuild.com. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Enjoy talking to you.
Thanks as always, Dana. Appreciate you.